Hi everyone, let's do pen tests on some of the more popular books and papers, and I'm not an expert on anything. This is just the kind of video that I would have liked to see when I was trying to choose papers and notebooks. So let's go. This is a moleskine, acid free, it's 70 GSM, it's ivory and it's hardcover. It's the only hardcover one I have. I have already done pen tests on this, but I'm starting from scratch with you guys. Okay, so our first pen is the Friction Erasable, and this is the new Friction Erasable, which is darker than the older one. Second pen, it's Sarasa Dry, Energel 10 millimeters. Micron 05. Put in a suke. Brush. Now these two are the same Pentel Sign brush pens, but I have a lighter one and the darkest one. So I'm testing both just to be a little clearer, a little fairer on the pens and the papers. This might be a surprise. This is the Zig Color Dot, and that's 2 seconds, that's 3 seconds, and then that's 1 second. I should have done it the other way around. That's okay. This is Zebra Click Art. This is Tombow. Oops. This is the N15. And this is Stabilo Boss. This is a Toosby Eco, and I have Quink fountain pen ink. I was only going to do the Noodles, but the Noodles is so dark and so intense. I thought it was fair to add a very well behaved and less dark ink like the Quink. Oh, it's feathering so much, it's awful. Okay, this will be for our ghosting and bleeding, and I'm going to do now a smudge test. 1 second, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 20. For future notebooks, I am going to speed this up. The Sarasa Dry, 1 second, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There we go, 5 seconds. Should I put the numbers down? That might be easier. 1 second. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. A tiny bit of smudge on that 20. 1. Okay, that was our moleskin. I will move through the rest quietly and a little faster. Here we have a Leuchtturm 1917, also acid-free, 80 GSM. It's cream and it's also a soft cover. This is Clairefontaine. It's acid free, 90 GSM, and it's white paper and a soft cover. And this is just one of their notebooks. The paper is comparable to their other notebooks at 90 GSM. Here we have a Stellar GA6 365. It's 52 GSM. And it's an off-white and also a soft cover. Next is the Rhodia. It's one of their notebooks, Nice flexible cover, ivory paper, 90 GSM. This is a Midori notebook, and Midori markets their notebooks as MD paper, and I couldn't find anywhere on their website the GSM. And it's cream cover and cream paper and soft cover. Here we have Travelers Company. This is a standard TN, and they market theirs as MD paper, specifically at 80 GSM. It's a soft cover and it's white. This is Pop Run. It's acid free. It's 80 GSM, ivory, and it's a soft flexible cover. I think they also come in hardcover. It's not always easy to tell. I'm going to I have here a Hobonichi. It's also acid free, it's 52 GSM, and it's of course the famous Tomoe River paper. The Weeks is ivory, the A6 is white paper, and they're all soft covers. These ones, they of course come with hardcover, but it's the same paper. because I am testing the Hobonichi, I'm not testing other planners which have Tamori River paper. There are a lot of planners now that use Tamori River paper, like the Common Planner, Sterling Ink, and because it's very similar paper, I'm not going to test all of those. However, I will say that it does perform, each paper performs a little differently. I did find that my Hobonichi Weeks to my Hobonichi A6 or cousin, can't remember which, was a little different, and one is white and one is cream. That might have something to do with it, but they're not exactly the same, so it's always worth doing a pen test in every new notebook, planner or diary you buy. This is a sequins, and it's one of those more niche ones, not super popular, but it is about, and I did buy one, I did have one. I have stained the edges of the pages, but I have found a nice white one that we can use. Okay, we did it. We got through them, and now let's have a look. Oh, so many notebooks. Let's have a look how they fared with the ghosting and the bleed through predominantly, and a little look at the smudging. So here's our launch term 1917, and it's quite a smooth paper, so the dry time is a little longer than some. And absolutely goes through. And bleed through, I would say, only with the Stabilo Boss, and possibly a tiny bit, the teeniest bit with the click art. So that actually did quite well. I'm really surprised with the Stabilo Boss as well. Okay, so that's looking really good. This is the moleskin. It's more absorbent, so dry time much faster, of course. We've got bleed through, quite a lot of bleed through, and even to the next page, coming right through. So the Noodler's ink, the Quink, the Stabilo, the Tombow, the click art, the dot pen, the Pentel sign, the Furinosuke, the have all bled through. The Micron bleeds through at the ends. The end gel, tiniest bleed through. Even the Sarasa Dry has bled through. The only thing that hasn't is the friction. So it's definitely a biro rollable type notebook. There's the Clairefontaine. And this is a good balance between a smooth paper, but that's still a little more absorbent. So the dry time is sort of mid-range. It's quite good dry time. No bleed through, very minimal ghosting. Clairefontaine is amazing paper. It's what you expect. It's a proper 90 GSM. Even the Stabilo Boss. Although it's 90 GSM, it doesn't feel really weighty, which is another great thing about Clairefontaine. So absolutely no bleed through, and ghosting is very minimal. So I'll show you the second best one we have so far, and you can see here that's the Leuchtturm. Okay, so Clairefontaine is at the top there. I'm putting these in rough order. Here we have the Stalogy, one of my favourite notebooks. Again, it's very smooth paper, very similar to Tomoe River paper, but it isn't Tomoe River paper. So dry time is a little higher, a little longer. It's only 52 GSM. We do expect it to ghost, and yes, we've got ghosting. Bleed through we have with the Stabilo, definitely, and the clay cart, especially at the ends. Compared to the Leuchtturm, quite similar. more noticeable ghosting with it being a thinner paper and it being white. So this one will go before the launch stem. Rhodia, let's see what Rhodia is doing. It's a 90 GSM paper, so we expect it to do well. It is a smooth paper, so drying time is sort of mid-range. A good GSM, 90 GSM paper with minimal ghosting. Certainly it is ghosting. Absolutely no bleed through. If we compare it to the Clairefontaine, it's much more noticeable ghosting. Rhodia very close second. The Hobonichi Weeks, as we know, Tomoe River paper, very smooth. It takes quite a long time to dry most pens. Ghosting, as to be expected. Would you expect to see ghosting on such thin paper? But it's certainly manageable. It's part of the charm of most Tomoe River paper, if that's what you like. We do have bleeding on Stabilo and on the click art, but the others fared quite well. And this is one of those instances we have a teeny bit of bleed through with the dot markers, but I found with my A6 Hobonichi original that the dot markers came through more, that they bled through. But even the Stabilo isn't too bad. Okay, so who do we compare that with? Let's see the launch term. So it's doing better than the launch term here. Ghosting is far less noticeable, and bleed through, well, the launch term is better on the bleed through, but with those two pens, if we took those pens out of the running, the Hobonichi will be ahead with the lesser ghosting, but very close. I'm going to put the Hobonichi up one. Okay, standard TN, Traveller's Notebook. This is a drier paper, more absorbent, so dry time is much faster. But then we would expect a little bit of bleed through, which is what we have. So the zig dot is coming right through. Not too bad on the 1 second dots. By the 3, it's bleeding a little, and by the 5, definitely bleeding through. Stabilo, not too bad, bleeding through just at the end. It's actually faring quite well there. So compared to the Hobonichi Weeks, the TN is coming up ahead with less bleed through and less. It's very comparable ghosting. Very comparable, but it's ahead because of the less bleed through. I'll compare it to the Rhodia, which was ahead, which has no bleed through. So this is definitely after the Hobonichi, before the Rhodia. Midori Notebook. This has a sort of medium dry time. Goes quite a bit. And of course, as I said, that's a personal preference. A lot of people don't mind that for the advantage of lots more pages but less bulk. But absolutely no bleed through. Wonderful paper. So that has to go ahead with the TN. Let's compare it to the Rhodia. They both have no bleed through. This is of course thinner paper, so we expect it to ghost more. So this one goes ahead for ghosting, but then this one will go ahead for less bulk, more pages. And for dry time, it's quite comparable. It's extremely comparable. It's pretty much neck and neck. Stabilo dried faster on this one, and the pentel sign dried faster. So do the micron. So the Rhodia is, well, as far as pen test, Rhodia has to go ahead of the MG notebook. Okay, let's see this less expensive guy, the Pop Run 80 GSM. This is a very fast dry time, which means it's more absorbent, so we might expect some bleed through, which we do have, but not too bad. It's really only the Stabilo, a very small amount, the click art, like just barely. I'm grabbing my stronger glasses to have a really good tiny bleed through on the pentel sign. Very, very minimal, but it is there. So we have the Stabilo Boss, the click art, and the pentel sign, the darker pentel sign. It's just coming through. Quite a good amount of ghosting. Very nice performance for a less expensive notebook to some of these. Oh, you can't compare, the Rhodia is so good. Let's compare it to the Dory. Not as good. Let's compare it to the Hobonichi. Okay, so very comparable, but much more ghosting on the Pop Run and that teeny bit of bleed through compared to the Leuchtturm. Leuchtturm has less bleed through, comparable with ghosting, but less bleed through. With the Stalogy, can take the pentel sign with no bleed through. Comparable bleed through with the Stabilo Boss. Comparable with the click art. Can take the zig dot a little longer. So very similar to the Stalogy. It's quite surprising, but one down, I would say. Still very, very good for the price point. Very nice. And sequins, let's have a look at sequins. So dry time very fast. We expect it then to be absorbent and have bleed through, but it's not too bad. So the Noodler's ink, even the Noodler's ink isn't too bad. The Stabilo has come through, not terribly, but it has come through. The click art has bled through, and so has the pentel sign, and a tiny bit on the Furunosuke. But otherwise, not too bad. Not too bad. Right, let's compare it to, what can we compare it to? Not the moleskine, because that bled everywhere. Compare it to the Pop Run. And it's comparable, and maybe this one goes ahead because it's less ghosting. Oh no, less bleed through. We've got a little bit more bleed through on that one. Noodler's ink isn't bleeding through here at all, which is amazing. The Stabilo really is only bleeding here on this end, and that's not really bleeding through as much. Actually, the Pop Run is ahead. Okay, so in my order, in my unscientific order of pen tests, and of course the caveat is always that it's personal for everybody what you want out of a notebook. If you want the thicker pages with less ghosting, less bleeding, you may have to have a bulkier book. If you are okay with a good amount of ghosting because of how you use your notebook or your planner, and you want to carry it, or you just don't like bulk, then you can put up with ghosting and have the thinner paper. So it's absolutely a very, very personal thing. So when I say 1 to 10, it's not necessarily the best, the worst to the best, because it's what you want. The moleskin is number 10, and it fares the worst with bleed through, but I know it's a beloved it's a beloved notebook of a lot of people, and if you have it because of nostalgic reasons, or you just use a biro and you like it, then that's fair enough if you're willing to pay that price for a notebook whose paper certainly isn't quality, with all this bleed through, all this ghosting, but it's fairly dry. And fountain pen, I wouldn't say absolutely not, because fountain pen ink, there are, as you know, hundreds, and it really depends on your ink. If you stick to an EF, a very fine nib, and a dry ink like Herbin, you might be able to get away with it. But if you love using a fountain pen, then I'm not sure why you would go with a moleskine unless you're really attached to it. But it's definitely, if you love biro, that's the, then yeah, moleskine. So that's number 10. Number 9 is the sequence. The sequence's bonus is that it folds 360. So if you like taking notes like this, especially if you're out and about, if you love the size of it, there are so many pages to this. It's fantastic I wanted to use this as a commonplace book, so it can be really, really great for that. It's fared reasonably well with pens. For me, I would say that too much comes through, a little bit too much bleeds through, and there's a lot of ghosting for use as a commonplace book. But if you wanted to use it as a notebook, then it could be absolutely great, and you could just have so much in here. Number 8 is the Pop Run. Quite surprised by this little book, although it's only, number 8, it's not very high up. It did quite okay this is a day to view diary. It feels lovely, the cover, and it's a really nice size, and you've got the entire year day to view, and for the price point and the low level of bleed through, I mean, we're talking Stabilo Boss, so you keep away from the dark pencil sign and Stabilo. You can use all these pens, and even fountain pen ink, a really, really great alternative. I'm quite impressed by this little one, and it's pretty and feels good. Number 7 is Stalogy. I'm a little bit sad about this. I was hoping the Stalogy was a little higher up in ranks, because I do love the Stalogy. And what do I love about it? Well, I love that it's very similar to Moy River paper, but it's a little less pricey. And I love how blank it is, and because I do love thinner paper that I can put lots and lots in here in one book. I do love that. So for that, it's absolutely great. Ton of ghosting, bleed through is very, very good, just the click out and the Stabilo, really. But if you love thin paper and you don't mind ghosting, then Stalogies are still really, really great. Leuchtturm, another lovely cover. This is the pocket size, really wonderful paper. It does ghost a lot, Leuchtturm, but the bleed through is almost non-existent, other than the Stabilo and a tiny bit on the click art. But the Noodlers was fine, and even the Pentel Dark, really great. Really impressed with this one. As a notebook, if it's just taking notes, which is often what we do with a pocket notebook, then really great. It can take your gel pens and even your fountain pen ink. So a really, really great notebook, of course. Number 5 is a Hobonichi Weeks, and as I mentioned earlier, all Tomoe River paper needs to be tested because it can be different. And well, it's Tomoe River paper, you know, well loved by thousands of us, and just a tiny little bit, you know, for very super thin paper, the bleed through and the ghosting is pretty amazing. Only the Stabilo, only the click art really came through. Even dark Noodler's ink and everything else did really well. I actually have the tiniest amount of bleed through on the end of this, just one dot on the end gel, strangely. But you could use a gel pen here with really no problems. But of course, all pens are different. But wonderful Hobonichi, of course. Number 7 is TN. So we have the most minimal of bleed through with the Stabilo Boss, and the tiniest amount with the click art. You could even use a click art and possibly get away with it, depending how you're using the book. If it was just journaling, it might come through too much for you, but if you're doing ephemera and writing, that shouldn't be a problem at all. The zig dart again just comes through so many things, so it doesn't work well. But as a quick 1 second, it's okay, and even a few seconds, you could possibly get away with using it. Ghosting, it does ghost a good amount, but quite less than, say, the Hobonichi papers. And it's 80 GSM rather than 90. It doesn't feel especially heavy, so it's not super bulky. Of course, it doesn't compare to Tomoe River paper or the Midori for lack of bulk. So the Midori, beautiful cream paper, lovely notebooks, of course, that lie flat. No bleed through, so we're now in the no bleed through territory at number 8. What can you say? It's sort of perfect, other than the ghosting. If you don't like ghosting, then we're still on the thinner types of papers where you'll get a good amount of ghosting. So if you don't like ghosting, not great. If you don't mind ghosting, then fantastic for lack of bleed through. At number 9, we have the Rhodia, which I'm really surprised about. I haven't really used Rhodia with dark pens, and I'm super impressed because the paper doesn't feel super thick, but it is, I feel, more towards the Bouger territory of the thicker paper, but it doesn't feel really bulky. I like flexible notebooks, so this is a nice flexible one. It's an A6 size, has a good feel to it. But this is the one to go to next if you want less ghosting. Still ghosting, because we're not in the really thick papers. But for a notebook, if you want to use some dark pens, fantastic. Really wonderful. And then at number 10, Clairefontaine. Just amazing. Amazing for a little notebook like this. It's really great. However, we are talking 90 GSM. It's weighty, much like the Rhodia. It's weighty paper. You're not going to get as many pages compared to something like, it's not really comparable in size, but the amount of pages there to what you could get here, or even more so compared to a Stalogy. So if you want something that is your daily diary and you want to keep, you know, this is 365 days. If you want to keep a whole year, then thin paper is amazing, and you put up with the ghosting. But if you don't like the ghosting, then you accept less paper, and maybe use your book for something else other than a yearly book, or split up your books like the Avex. But wonderful if you love using fountain pens and you love making notes with fountain pen, or just some darker pens, or like using this as sort of a little bujo with you know, really dark, even the click art, which often goes through in the Stabilo. Look at that, that is so fantastic. I mean, paper is paper. Unless it's really thick, you won't get you'll always get a little bit of ghosting, and there's just the minimal amount of ghosting, barely noticeable. Really amazing, wonderful paper by Clairefontaine. But again, it's all personal preference and what you need from a book. The other great thing about this is that the dry time is really good. So I hope that was helpful. Pause the sections if you need to see close-ups of any of the pens and bleed-throughs and such. Please like and subscribe before you leave. I hope that's helped you. It's even helped me. My discovery is the rhodia, how high up the scale goes with a pen test. I'm really impressed by that. So hopefully you learned something new, or it's just a nice reference for you. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.